Within the rich tapestry of folklore and Native American legends, there exists a creature shrouded in mystery and fear. It is said to possess a power beyond comprehension, able to shape-shift and roam the night with an insatiable hunger for human souls. Join us as we embark on a journey into the enigmatic realm of the Skinwalkers. What follows is a true account, shared by a friend, of their harrowing encounter with one of these elusive beings.
My name is Henry, and I currently live in Ottawa, Canada. Where I live, the nights are bitterly cold, and people retreat indoors as soon as the sun sets. One evening, as I was returning from work, I stumbled upon a dog tied to a tree. I noticed it was a Siberian husky, and something about him caught my attention. He seemed frightened, indicating that his previous owners had mistreated him. I remembered having a piece of my unfinished lunch, so I offered it to him. The dog eagerly accepted and devoured it. I sat beside him, patiently waiting for him to trust me. The thought of taking him home crossed my mind as I longed for companionship. The silence that greeted me every evening after work would be transformed if I had a faithful companion like a dog. After a few minutes, he approached me and allowed me to untie him. Without hesitation, I decided to take him home. It was a better fate for him than enduring the cold and hunger tied to that tree. There was no one else in the streets at that hour, so I untied him, and he followed me all the way to my house. Despite his mischievous breed, he displayed remarkable nobility and gratitude. I grew fond of him and named him Cooper. My house had a spacious yard, perfect for a dog, but Cooper preferred staying inside the house, especially by the side of the couch where I sat. He kept me company as I watched television after a long day of work. We remained like that for about a month. One weekend afternoon, I decided to take Cooper for a walk. It wasn't as cold as usual, so I thought it would be a good idea to visit the park. I encountered a worried neighbor along the way. He mentioned hearing strange noises between his house and mine, asking if Cooper had ever escaped during my absence when I went to work, as he found scratches on the walls of his house. Cooper was always either in the house or in the yard, so it couldn't have been him. After some convincing, I managed to assure the neighbor that Cooper had nothing to do with the situation. We returned home as the night began to fall and the chills set in. As we entered, Cooper dashed to snuggle by the side of the couch, seeking the warmth of the carpet. I went to the kitchen to make some coffee and got engrossed in reading the newspaper. Suddenly, I heard a loud noise coming from outside the house. I tried to identify the source and witnessed one of the garbage cans being flung into the air. I quickly peered out the window and was left stunned to discover it was Cooper. It was my dog, but that was impossible. Cooper was inside the house with me, yet the dog outside was identical. Suddenly, the dog outside ceased scratching the aluminum cans and departed. It was all very strange. I went to sit next to Cooper as usual, trying to calm my nerves. But then I heard someone calling my name from outside and ringing the doorbell. I assumed it was my neighbor. I got up to open the door and attend to him, but at that moment, a peculiar feeling washed over me. I decided to peek through a side window of the door, and what I saw sent shivers down my spine. It was the same dog that resembled Cooper, but this time it spoke like a man, screaming at me to let him in. I glanced at Cooper, who had his tail tucked between his legs. I couldn't comprehend what was happening. The behavior of the dog outside was inexplicable. He continued yelling my name, demanding that I open the door. I hesitated, unsure of what to do. The voice sounded distorted, a haunting blend of canine and human. The atmosphere grew suffocating as an intense feeling of dread gripped me. It was as if the boundary between the natural and the supernatural had been shattered. Deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. My instincts screamed at me to resist the creature's demands, to protect myself and Cooper. Frustrated by my reluctance to open the door, the creature left the porch, disappearing from view. I hurriedly called my neighbor, desperate to share the unnerving encounter. But as soon as he answered, I could hear the dog's relentless barking in the background. I explained that Cooper was safely inside with me, but my neighbor insisted that the dog was outside his house, barking persistently. Bewildered, my neighbor abruptly ended the call, convinced that the dog was mine. Everything fell silent. I sat in my armchair, attempting to catch my breath. The real Cooper trembled beside me. Taking a sip of my coffee, a sudden knock on the door echoed through the house. Yet this time, it was different. A knock that resembled a human's. Approaching the window, I was shocked to see my brother standing outside. My brother had always promised to visit me in Canada. He claimed to be my brother, urging me to open the door. Just as I was about to comply, Cooper's frantic barking pierced the air. The phone rang. Instinctively, I answered while reaching for the doorknob, only to hear my neighbor's voice from the other end. "Don't open the door. He's not your brother," he warned. I asked how he knew, and he explained that the creature outside was a skinwalker, known for assuming the form of animals or even familiar faces to deceive its victims. Never did I imagine facing something so terrifying in reality. The being at the door persisted, repeatedly claiming to be my brother. Its voice intertwined with other eerie tones, as if a multitude of people were speaking simultaneously. Meanwhile, my neighbor continued describing the dark shadow composed of black smoke that he saw outside my house. My neighbor began recounting an old legend from Ottawa. They say the Skinwalkers arrived here centuries ago when the first settlers came to these lands. They supposedly took the form of wolves, owls, and even people to feed on the settlers. It's been many years since one was last seen, but the signs are there. Scratches on the walls, strange noises, and the appearance of a familiar face. Trusting my neighbor's warning, I resisted the temptation to open the door. I hung up the phone, returned to the safety of my armchair, and tried to maintain my composure. Cooper, too, seemed frightened, barking softly towards the door. The creature resembling my brother continued pounding on the door, calling my name, pleading for entry. It began to claim hunger and coldness, slowly convincing me that it could truly be my brother. Despite my fear, I made up my mind to confront it. I stood up and approached the door. "What do you want from me?" I shouted through the door. There was silence, and then the creature spoke. Its voice was an exact replica of my brother's, but with a cold, malicious tone I had never heard before. It told me it wanted to come inside. "I just want to come in," it said. I responded firmly and decisively that I would not let it in. Everything fell silent. Cooper stopped barking and began panting, fear gleaming in his eyes. In that moment, I knew we were not safe. That creature would not stop until it got what it wanted. Cooper and I stayed together in the living room, keeping all the lights on that night and never straying apart. Sleep eluded me. I feared the creature's return. Before I knew it, dawn had already broken. Daylight seeped through the windows, and the atmosphere felt markedly different. Opening the door, I turned to glance at my neighbor's house, only to be horrified by the sight. His front door had been violently torn off its hinges. I rushed to my neighbor's house, finding chaos within: overturned furniture, claw marks on the walls, and bone-chilling coldness in the air. It appeared as though a beast had been unleashed, wreaking havoc in its wake. There was no sign of my neighbor. I called for Cooper and commanded him to search for the neighbor. Somehow, I believed that Cooper's animal instinct would be able to track him down if he was still somewhere in the house. Cooper sniffed around, exploring every corner of the house until he reached the basement. The basement door was slightly ajar, with dim, flickering light seeping out from within. Growling, Cooper's fur stood on end as he descended the basement stairs. I followed behind, filled with trepidation. What I found in the basement left me dumbfounded. My neighbor, terrified and trembling, hiding in a corner. He had wounds on his arms and seemed to have been there all night. I asked if he was all right. He weakly nodded, appearing exhausted and shaken. He told me that dawn was nearing when suddenly I appeared at his door, hurling insults. He never suspected it was a skinwalker because there were two people, but it seemed this entity had learned to assume two different forms. He closed the door as quickly as possible, but the skinwalker spoke in the voice of his deceased wife, claiming she was not dead and needed his help. Overwhelmed by the sight of his wife seemingly alive again and consumed by confusion, he ended up opening the door. That's when the creature burst in, attacking him and forcing him to flee to the basement. From that point on, the creature remained in his house, causing a terrible commotion, but it never descended into the basement. So my neighbor spent the remaining night hiding, fearing for his life. We decided to put an end to all of this. My neighbor provided me with a revolver he had kept hidden, indicating that the skinwalker must still be nearby. It was the perfect moment to finish it. With Cooper by my side, I felt brave enough to confront any evil. As we stepped out of the neighbor's house, I noticed that the sky had darkened again, and a drizzle began to fall. We searched the surroundings, behind houses, even on the rooftops, but found nothing. Suddenly, Cooper barked, sensing movement in the bushes. I approached in silence, ready to shoot when a rabbit emerged from the thicket, hopping away. It startled me, and Cooper seemed eager to chase it, but the rabbit was too fast and disappeared behind a house. Cooper ran after the rabbit, momentarily vanishing from my sight. Moments later, Cooper returned, looking quite pleased. We returned home. I sat on the couch, trying to gather my thoughts, and Cooper sat right in front of me. That's when I realized something was off. A knot of anxiety formed in the pit of my stomach as I realized that the dog sitting in front of me wasn't Cooper. My dog always sat by my side when I sat on the couch. "You're not my dog," I said, pulling out the neighbor's revolver. The dog grew uneasy and started barking at me. I repeated that it wasn't my dog, and this seemed to agitate it further. In an instant, as it took a step toward me, I fired a shot into its left side. At first, it cried out like a dog, but as it limped towards the exit, the cry transformed into something eerily human. Its body began to change, taking on an almost human-like form, with its arms and legs still covered in Cooper's fur. I was so bewildered that I could hardly believe what I was witnessing. Seizing the opportunity, the creature fled the scene. Not even 5 minutes had passed when a couple of patrol cars arrived, as the neighbors had heard the commotion and called for help upon hearing the gunshot. My neighbor and I explained that it was a mythological creature, but when they didn't believe us, we played it off as a wild animal. My main concern was finding Cooper, since I hadn't seen him since he chased the rabbit. Unfortunately, we found my best friend lifeless. That creature had attacked him right where the rabbit was supposed to be hiding. It had transformed into a rabbit to separate us and take advantage of the moment. Together with my neighbor, we are determined to put an end to this skinwalker. We are prepared for its return, and if it dares to come, we will finish what it left unfinished, seeking vengeance for my friend Cooper.
In this spine-tingling account of a skinwalker encounter, we've delved into the uncanny and surreal abilities that these enigmatic beings wield. While skinwalker myths have deep roots in the oral traditions of diverse Native American tribes, as we've seen in today's narrative, these unsettling encounters are not relics of the past, but persistent specters of the present. Moreover, the influence of these shapeshifters extends beyond the boundaries of tribal tales. Skinwalkers also find their place in the folklore and narratives of other American nations, including Mexico, where they are known as nahuales. In our future videos, we will further explore the realms of skinwalkers and nahuales, delving into the origins of their ominous powers, which are rooted in forbidden practices and the dark embrace of witchcraft. Stay tuned for these future videos. If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe to our channel. Your support keeps us going, and helps others discover these incredible urban legends and paranormal stories. We also want to hear your paranormal experiences. Share them with us at voiceofdarkness666@gmail.com, and they may feature in future episodes. Thank you for joining our journey into the unknown. Until the next time.